Truly Honest Talk Radio have a guest in house with us today by the name of Dan Schaefer. He has some background and history in politics and is running for the House of Representatives for the state of Missouri for the next election on the state level. Welcome, Dan, and
Thanks
please,
so much.
say a few more things about yourself, and then we'll jump into this.
Sure. Well, thanks, Elmo. It's a great introduction there. I'm running for the Missouri House of Representatives, District 97. Now, Missouri's a pretty red state, and I'm running as a Democrat. And actually happen to be a fairly progressive person, socially progressive, I would say, fiscally conservative. Um, my background is I've had a lot of many years in engineering, electrical engineering. So I designed a lot of computers. I used to write a lot of software. Decided to cut loose at one point and travel with the salespeople. So I ended up being like a sales engineer for many years. Traveled the world, literally traveled the world with a Globetrotter for a number of years. Picked up a lot of good information about people in different countries and had a really good experience for me. And it kind of rounded out my experience. Around 2019, I decided to do my own podcast and actually did I produced two different podcasts, did about 200 episodes and interviewed a lot of people. And
Wow.
last year I asked the Democratic Party, why isn't anybody running against the Republican here in this district? And they said, why don't you run? So I had to join the Democratic Party and decided to just jump in and do it. So it's kind of
hmm
my background in a nutshell.
Okay. All right. Good deal. And you have some ideals or things that you created and you talk about sometime. And so there's a lot. We'll give them like a website or a place where they can find more information about you. But
Yes.
this is just one session, so we'll hit a few things.
Sure.
One thing that I saw in your profile that got my attention, I wanted to know more about, and I'm just making sure that I say it correctly. So the moral certainty and political blindness,
Hmm.
and I never, or most of the time, I don't assume that what I see is what I think it is. So you can kind of define that and then elaborate on it a little bit. Moral
Sure.
certainty.
Well, that's an article I wrote, I think, back in early May, and I've challenged myself to write an article every weekday, and I've been keeping that up for the last couple months. So, forgive me if my brain is a little bit rusty about that particular article. But if I recall correctly, I started off talking about Michelle Obama and a statement that she made in the 2016 Democratic National Convention, and she that was where she made that famous statement, when they go low we go high. And I key off from that point to write the rest of the article. I understand where she was coming from, but I completely disagree that she should have said that actually that created more distance between the Democratic Party and the people. And the
Let me ask you
reason
a
why.
question about that.
What's that?
I never heard Michelle say that, but I did hear Hillary say it. So
Yeah.
you think Hillary might have stolen that from her, or kind of repeated that idea, or who would you
I
say was the
don't.
first one to say
Yeah,
it?
I'm not sure. I do know that Michelle Obama said it, and she got a lot of attention for that. And but the problem with that expression, whether it was Obama or Hillary, I'm sure Hillary might have reflected it as well. The problem with that attitude is that it says if you don't agree with me, you are not you're not moral. You're immoral. You are somehow lower than us. And
Oh,
I don't agree with that on the outset. I think there are some people, obviously they have some really obnoxious perspectives, like people that would support genocide and things like that. Okay, I don't have a problem calling the shots there, but I think 99% of Americans would be clear on that moral decision. But the Democratic Party has always been tarred with this or painted with this brush that says, we're better than you, we're higher than you. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the right attitude. Hillary did say basket of deplorables. That was
Yeah.
another big mistake. It was a big tell as to how she thinks about people, and that is completely the wrong attitude, I think. And so the moral certainty part about it is that you must feel pretty morally certain about your perspectives to say something like that and to act that way is that just isolates you from everybody else. I think that's what I was getting at in that article there that you're referring to.
Yeah, and then also you mentioned that you were writing every weekday, or you made a decision to do that, and that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So if this was in May, then you may have done 10 or 15 or 20 since
Well,
then.
I've done like since I started this quest, I think it's up to 70 right now. So
Okay.
yeah, and I don't
Okay.
give myself a break even on vacation. I was still writing.
Really?
So well, what you call vacation. I'm somewhat retired right now. I'm working part time, but I'm
Yeah.
have a lot of free time. But still, even when I travel somewhere, I try to write an article a day.
I think I know what you mean, because there's always so much going on for people that are in
Correct.
politics or in the news,
Yeah.
that uh, almost every day there's something that comes out that's worth reporting on or talking about to some degree.
Yeah.
Sometimes much doesn't change from within a couple of days, but then look at what's going on with ICE in
Hmm.
LA, and I want to talk about that
Sure.
a little bit later as well. And then so in the same title of the same article, political blindness, those affect each other.
Yeah.
uh, I'm 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 guessing. So yeah, talk a little more about that, or when someone is taking this stance of being on a moral higher.
It's about what they're doing, and
Yeah.
it's really not solving the problem. It's just making it worse, and it's solidifying the opposition. And you'll see that happen this Saturday on the 14th of June, where everybody's going to be, there's going to be no King's Day, right? Because
Hmm.
the more you try to tell people what to do and tell them what the righteous path is, the more they'll push back on you. Exactly.
um yeah, I know that in politics and in the church there can be this confusion. uh, just saying with the church and talking about Christianity is, my church, we have been taught to hate the sin and not the sinner.
Hmm.
So more focusing on, I think it's okay to say this is morally right or this is morally wrong to behave in this way or do this. But like you said, it alienates people, potential voters, when you say that you are low life and with a low IQ, or something insulting.
Yeah.
And it should be, I don't know, I think it's a good way to lead people when you say, when you do these things you get good results, and
Right.
when you do these bad things you get bad
Real bad
results.
results. Right.
Or at least look at history and when this has been done before. So maybe we don't want to go in that direction. And then when I spoke to you once before, I mentioned the sandbox just as a test.
Hmm.
A confined area or community or city or whatever. One example is defunding the police. I don't know if I know there's not as many people that are on board with that as there were 5 years ago. But for anybody who's, really strong and pushing for that, first of all, you should be willing to do that in your city, in your district. And so let's let's see what happens when they don't have the money to be fully staffed or to get all the weapons that they need. Let's see what happens. That's the best way to test and know. But you want to test out if a bomb works, like Oppenheimer. They didn't detonate it over a whole city. They had a
Right.
small area. So let's see what happens, and then with the results of that, with the facts of what happens, it's hard to argue with what the what the effects are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, that's, you talk about, you pick that example, defunding the police. On the surface, it sounds pretty bad, like a pretty bad idea to me. Um,
Mm,
we do rely on police officers to maintain control in the sense that we don't have somebody burglarizing our house or some yahoo running up the street,
yeah.
90 miles an hour through your neighborhood or something like that, and endangering everybody.
Hmm.
Those are the kinds of things you need police for. And defunding that, you're putting people in a position of having to decide between uh, a defunded police department and and well, you're basically putting them in that position of having to deal with that. And I've already seen the police officers being defunded. I mean, I know, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I grew up in Florissant, Missouri, which is North St. Louis County, and we would have police. We had our own police department there. They would ride two per car. They had partners, and that was
Yeah.
standard procedure. And now you
Right.
see a lot of times you see one police officer per car,
Yeah.
and that really
See a lot
concerns
of
me
that.
because they can get into situations where they need a partner there. You're coming up on a
Very
car, you
fast.
pull someone over for speeding or something. You need your, I would think, I mean, I'm not a cop, but I would think you'd feel a whole lot safer if you had your partner kind of backing you up.
Absolutely.
So they've already
Yeah.
been defunded to a certain degree. And I think what happens in these situations is the community begins to distrust the police because the police starts to not trust the community. They don't get out
Hmm.
into the community as much. They're not getting out of their car and talking to the people. Again, going back to when I was a kid, we had a lieutenant, I forgot what his name was, but he was with the police department, and he was considered a friend of the school, and he would come by like
Right.
once or twice a year. That we'd have a little get together, and he would talk to the kids, and the kids could ask him questions. We always asked dumb questions like, can I touch your gun or something like that, but it was all always about good relations. And so I
Right.
always
Right.
felt comfortable. Of course, I grew up in a fairly microcosm of America, but I grew up pretty comfortable with the police, and I really had no problems with them. And there were some times where I did get myself in a little bit of trouble, underage
Hmm.
drinking sort of trouble, and the cops gave me a break, because that's
Yeah.
the way things went back then. But there's this distrust at this point, and it gets to a point where in LA, we're seeing where police are hiding behind their riot gear and such. I would like to see it
Yeah.
just put that riot gear down and just mix with the people and say, hey, look, we're just here to make sure you guys aren't going to, burn any cars or deface any buildings or anything, and just walk
Yeah.
among the people. You know.
And I guess we could talk about that now, but I know the police, they have certain things to put in place, and they're gauging what the threat is,
Right.
or the threat size. So yeah,
But
I've
the
seen,
fact
I've
that you're
seen.
using that word threat though is really that's telling, because why should we look at our fellow civilians as potential threats, right? I mean, I understand that there's that element out there, but we become so used to uh, police officers being brutal and thinking about things as in
Mhm.
terms of threats rather than in terms of opportunities to help people. But I mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying based on what's going on, like whether they are wearing their riot gear or not, but if they show up to a location, there's a crowd of people, like where all these police cars were parked on the freeway by a bridge, and there's 20 or 25 people on the other side of the rail up on the bridge lobbying and throwing things over, and all of the cars are damaged to one degree or another, or guys have smoke bombs, or they're wearing bandanas covering half their face, and they have to treat it based on what it is, thing of probable cause, and in stopping someone. uh, Hold on a moment, I'm
Sure.
getting What is this? Refresh, rejoin from. Oh, okay. Getting a message here. It had to interrupt. So
Your
maybe
video
it'll work.
froze for a second, but your audio kept going. Oops, I think we got cut off. How do I rejoin? I think we just got cut off. There we go. Oh, now you're back.
Yeah, now I'm back. It was saying I could rejoin, and it had a refresh button. But what it really meant was, I'm going to disconnect you, and you're going to. Hopefully, this will all be okay. Good. I see the clock is still going. There's still 1 o'clock. And Riverside like anticipates that. Like it can tell what you're talking about. Like there's a section called remove fluff or something that's not related to the topic. But anyway, we'll fix that. We'll fix that in editing. So I was going to say about that when we first started that police officers and teachers are two of the occupations that I want to see get paid more money. Just because they're putting and with the police officers that are out on the street, walking or patrolling, they should get more than their cops that never leave or barely leave the precinct or sitting behind a desk. Even if they've been there a long time, understand that there's got to be some priority to them. They need to be shown that they're appreciated. And then, the police department answers to the chief of police. The chief of police boss is the mayor. So the mayor can get with the chief and they can set up those events where the police can come. And they came to my school also when I was in elementary school, but they come in and talk to the adults because a lot of grown-ups are teaching children, you need to be scared and you don't need to trust them or police are bad or whatever. And because I'm a conservative, I strongly believe in this thing about judging people as individuals and not by groups. So if you know the individual names of officers, then you can say, I like this person. He has a very different personality from this one, but I know who I'm dealing with and what I'm dealing with, depending on who it is.
Right.
I was in Dunkin' Donuts with one of my sons, had to be at least 5 years ago. And there were a couple cops sitting at another table, another round table. And so when it's time for them to get up and leave, one of them came over and talked to my son, who was maybe 12 at the time, and just asked him, are you getting good grades in school? And a couple other things along those lines. And then took out a $50 bill and gave it to him.
Whoa.
Like as a reward for doing well. And so I'm totally okay with that. Some men have too much pride for another man to give their son money. I don't care. I said, we graciously accept. Thank you, officer.
Yeah. Wow. Made your son's day. Yeah.
Right. And his impression of police officers, from his own interaction was something positive.
Yeah.
And if I remembered that, and I'm a grown person making money, and that's bigger than any allowance I ever gave him or that he ever got at one time. So I'm sure he's going to remember it, So
that's really good. It's a good
so
story.
yeah, when I look at things in the news, there's one common thing. We're all part of the human race. We're all connected. This morning, I heard about the plane crash in India last night, right after takeoff. Close to 250 people, their lives taken away. And I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a terrible thing. At the same time, I have to compare that to if you're up at 30,000 feet and then you hit some hard turbulence, or you look out the window and, the wing is smoking and then the the captain comes on the speaker and says, "All right, everybody, we're going down. Put your head between your knees." And
Yeah.
then you have this, some people have handled it much better than others, understand. But if anyone doesn't doesn't want to be in anything close to that situation, that is much worse than uh, within a minute or two after this took off.
Yeah.
I think most of them didn't know it was coming or didn't know what hit them.
Yeah.
You're still pretty close to the ground, and
Yeah.
the captain he's trying to recover and get this thing, back up in the air. So I don't know if they even have time to go on and talk to people and to prepare.
Oh,
But
not really.
but
No.
they usually. I mean, this was an Indian airline. I don't know if they're
Right.
much different from their procedures, but I know on Delta or Southwest, you got to keep your seatbelt on
Yeah.
until the light comes off. As usually at least 6-7 minutes after takeoff.
Oh
You
yeah,
know.
it's kind of the same in India because I've flown Indian Air before because I
Oh yeah.
used to travel to India not quite a bit. I was there twice for 2 weeks at a time each, and yeah, we'd base ourselves out of Bangalore, but we would fly to all the different cities out there: Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, and so I've flown Indian Air before. It's pretty much
Hmm.
the same as here. They have their same regulations. I never
Yeah.
had any feeling that it was that it was any less safe than it was here. So
Sure.
it's the procedures are almost exact. The only thing is it's different is I got on one flight and the stewardess said this is a meditation flight. What's that?
What does that?
So
What
we
does
get
that
up.
mean?
Well, we get up to about our cruising altitude, whatever it was, 30,000 feet. It was a short flight. We're probably about an hour, hour and a half or so. But while we were up there, as soon as we got to cruising altitude, she said, "Okay, now everybody follow along with me." And she had us sit there and close our eyes, and she brought us. It was a guided meditation, basically. It's one of the
Yeah.
coolest flights I've ever had, and
Huh.
it was. She talked about listen to the sound of the plane, listen to the sound of your breathing, and so on. And she
Hmm.
brought us to this point, and then she sings this song, this song probably from her native place or whatever. And it
Hmm.
was just the most delightful feeling. I got off that plane feeling refreshed and everything. So it was just kind of a fun experience to have that in India.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure that wasn't the purpose of the flight, but there's some flights that would have that on it. If
Mm.
she's mentioning to people that it is one, that means that some are not. So I'm wondering if that's kind of like being in first class, or like just something elevated or complimentary that's
Mm.
added to it. Um,
And I don't know. That's the only. I've flown a lot within India. Almost every day I'd be flying, but
uh,
it was no. That was the only flight I had there that did that.
yeah,
It was fun. It's like it. I still. It was like 20 years ago, but I still talk about it today.
yeah, yeah. That's where yoga came from. And this guy, oh, what is this man's Sad or Saji, the Indian guru with the long white beard.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now that the mic is open and I'm on the air, my brain goes blank. But yeah, I know
Oh,
what
that's
you're talking
okay.
about
But
there.
but I've seen interviews with him, and they've had a culture for a very long time, and they have figured out a lot about meditation. And heard the story about this guy who he just calmed down and slowed his heartbeat so slow that people thought he was dead,
Oh
you
wow,
know. And so
wow.
he went into like a coma state, but
Hmm.
he was able to come out of it anytime he wanted to,
Hmm.
you know. So hey, we're all in the same world on the same earth, and we can all learn things from each other in different cultures.
Yeah,
Uh,
you might be
th-
talking
that
about.
same that same Hindu priest, or
Mhm.
the man I was talking about, he told a story of someone vibrating water, or like creating like a heat with either both their hands or holding their palm over a small puddle of water and it started to rumble, you know,
Ah, wow.
rumble and vibrate. So
Yeah.
there's something real about that. And Bruce Lee like was able to like combine energy, you
Mhm.
know, but he would use it in fighting. So put a
Yeah.
lot of energy, channel it to his hand, and then thrust it forward. And with him not moving his feet, and then he knocks a guy 15 feet back,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's
Yeah.
only 160 pounds or whatever. So
Yeah, that guy was fierce though, man. He was one of the best. He was.
yeah,
I
yeah,
studied
amazing.
karate for many years as well, and the techniques he had were quite good, quite good.
And I've heard that he was very controversial at the time because he was the first one that wanted to combine taekwondo, karate, jujitsu, and others together. And all the other masters and instructors were exclusive to those martial arts.
Ah,
Almost like if there was a church that wanted to bring all the denominations together
yeah,
and say,
yeah.
listen, we're gonna just sort through all of this, and we can talk about it or whatever. But yeah, we know how religion can be, and how dare somebody take a slight turn to the left or the right when
Mhm.
something has been done the same way for 1,000 years. you
Oh,
know
yeah, yeah. Well, where do you think all the factions come from in any religion?
yeah.
It's
Yeah, and then the combining of the two,
mhm.
where the government is is the church,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
like in many countries in the Middle East,
yeah. It was that way in
whatever is
Europe.
the religious law is the law of the land,
Right.
and we use the police to enforce religious law.
Yeah.
But
Well, the
we
Bible's
we learn
original
from history as far as that goes. But
from what I understand, the Bible's original intent was to lay down law. It was a book of law, the Old Testament especially.
oh
And
yeah.
the New Testament is more about God loving Jesus and so on. But the
Hmm.
Old Testament,
Yeah.
you read something like Leviticus or something, especially. I mean, it's a series of laws
Yeah.
that that are somewhat antiquated these days. I mean, women aren't excommunicated when they're having that period of time every month or something like that.
Yeah.
We pretty much gotten around all that, but yeah, most of those laws are antiquated. But the New Testament is something that I think has much resonates much more today in our
Sure.
society.
Sure. And I think at that time it was good for someone to have some kind of a guide or a moral compass before governments were really established, for people to know how to live right. What is the right thing to do, and based on there being a God. And if there is a God, I serve this God. What does He want? Because when
Right.
I'm left to my own opinion and my own vices, things can get selfish.
Right. Right.
Um, just because you said you traveled to India, let me ask if you ever heard of Ravi Zacharias?
No, no. I traveled there in business, so I didn't get to
Oh
see
yeah.
much of the cultural thing. Yeah.
Well, he was a preacher from India, and moved to Canada when he was a teenager, I think,
Hmm.
and then moved to Atlanta, and like set up a church here. But he did apologetics and going to college campuses and challenging and debating people on the authenticity of the
Wow.
Bible and whatnot. And so, one guy said, "Well, I'm a pretty good person. I should be able to decide what's right and wrong for my life." And Ravi said something like, "Well, what if your neighbor feels that way, and your neighbor is his opinion that it's okay to boil you in oil and then eat you?
Right. Right.
So we can't have everybody just doing what they want." But again, look at the results. I can't think of her name right now, but this was this girl. She's South African and Jewish, and I can't think of her name. She has in Ngomi, something like that, Ngomi.
Hmm.
But um, they let the the cameraman get on sometimes and speak and say his opinions, and
Mhm.
so that's kind of where I get that from. Like
Okay.
he said on there, he said, when I'm talking to people, I say, regardless of what you believe, when I do what the Bible says, my life is better than if I don't do what it says. And
Yeah.
so that counts for something. But
Well,
anyway, to get back to your work and your
mhm.
uh, your articles and beliefs about things, there's another thing that you said, another statement about why Missouri votes for progressive issues, but conservative candidates.
Yeah. That's something I've talked about this with lots of other folks, and it's something I'm still trying to get my head around, I have to admit. But every time Missouri has an opportunity to vote for progressive things, they go for it. For example, we have fairly uh, loose marijuana laws at this point. So
Yeah,
marijuana is basically legal, recreational marijuana, that is. Um, we had tried to rewrite the Constitution, not rewrite the we tried to change a law called, we call it this way, we call it the Clean Missouri, which was supposed to keep, actually, it was a constitutional amendment, sorry about that, but that was supposed to uh, regulate gerrymandering so that political districts were drawn in a more fair way, and they had a way
yeah,
of doing it. Well, 2 years later, the Republicans who have the supermajority here backed that one out. But nevertheless, a majority of people voted for that. Majority of people voted to get rid of the abortion ban in Missouri. So that was
yeah,
written into our constitution as well. We can talk a little bit more about that, but there's a never-ending chapter about that in Missouri here. Um, we voted to raise minimum wage. We voted to provide earned sick leave for people. So every time, and it's not a small number of people, it's a fairly significant majority of people vote on these progressive issues. And then what happens is they vote for these conservative candidates, Republican mainly, that do nothing but back out these laws, and they
yeah.
fight these
Hmm.
laws. We also voted for Medicare expansion, and the Republicans fought that one tooth and nail, but the judge had to come in and say, no, you guys got to do what the people say. So it was,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Missouri is beginning to learn a couple lessons here in terms of being progressive, but voting for conservative candidates.
I
And
was thinking,
yeah, go
no, I
ahead.
was just thinking that sometimes it may come down to that candidate and what he's saying in his campaign and what he's talking about that could sway people or win them over. And whoever they're running against, it can come down to those two people. It's usually more than two running because you have the other parties, but with the two main
Sure.
candidates, it comes down to them. And sometimes people, like for example, I'm sure there's a lot of people that voted for Trump that would have voted for Biden, but they didn't want to vote for Kamala,
Right.
necessarily. So I think
Or they
sometimes
just
people can
didn't
just
vote at all. Yeah.
right, yeah, that's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
There are people that they definitely didn't want to vote for Trump, but they didn't like what she was saying, and so that was kind of like a vote for Trump or who would have ever been in the lead.
Hmm.
And then just me myself, I'm sure you remember people like Zell Miller and oh, what is this guy's Lieberman, Joe
Oh, Lieberman, yeah.
Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman, yeah.
So Zell Miller was he was a Democrat in Congress, and Joe Lieberman ran for president, but John Kerry got the nomination instead. And I'm just saying that I really like Lieberman, even though he's a Democrat. I would have voted for him,
Hmm.
and what I heard from other Democrat voters, yeah, but he's real conservative, or he's too
Yeah.
far on right,
He
but
was pretty conservative. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's kind of what I look at as opposed to a label, the
Yeah.
label of the party. What are they talking about? Understand there can be an entire party behind you, and they have they have handlers, or they have people that are trying to tell you what you need to do to win. And people should be honest. I'm just saying, once they get in office, that you are the head of that office, whatever it is you're operating in. So let people talk to you, let them consult you, and then make a decision. What you think is right or wrong.
Right.
Instead of just letting them, is it just hand them the keys? Okay, I'm gonna sit in the back seat. Let me know when I need to make a public appearance to get on camera and turn it at 3/4 angle. Tell me what to wear. Can somebody
Yeah.
lay my clothes out? I don't know what looks the best or what's gonna work in my favor. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that's not good. It's not good.
Well, there's a lot to unpack over what you just said there, but yeah, in general, I would say that the more extremist Republicans in Missouri have told you where they're coming from.
Mhm.
They've been fairly honest in that regard. They tell you who they are and where they're coming from, and so I still have to question, why do people then vote for it? And there's that split mind that goes that drives a wedge here in Missouri, as it does across the whole nation. But I will say this much: one of the biggest factors, I believe, is the messaging. Republicans
Yeah.
have had a superior messaging um, channel for many, many years. And they built this channel up over many years. Ann Nelson wrote a book. I don't know if you know her book, called Shadow Network, and she
Mhm.
itemized everything, all the pieces of history, how the conservative movement actually grabbed a hold of the media machine and controlled
Mhm.
it. Now, despite what they say with Fox News, which I like to call Fox Entertainment, they tend to be on one side, and CNN on the other side. No, they're all pretty much gone with the conservatives. CNN, MSNBC. I tune them out now. I don't watch them anymore because um, they, I believe, are part of this messaging machine. They've fallen for this message machine. How often do you hear about the LA riots that are taking place? They're not riots, or these are the things, these are the messages that come through the media. So people believe that, and let's face it, Trump gives people a lot of things, a lot of reasons to vote for him, because he'll say, "Oh, your finances are taking a hit right now because of Biden's inflation, and Biden opened up the border, let all these illegals in. You're all coming in now, and they're taking health care away from you." None of this stuff is true, but these messages travel very, very quickly, and they travel throughout the media sphere, especially the conservative ones, but even the ones that are supposedly not conservative. These messages travel, and people believe these untruths. I can't tell you how many people I run into that say, "I don't want illegal aliens getting free health care and free Social Security." I say, they don't get that. Go look it up. They don't get any of that. That's what it
Mhm.
means to be an illegal alien. You're not taking any of the safety net, but people
Mhm.
don't believe that, right? And so the messaging is out there, and the Democrats are extremely poor at fixing that record. And what they don't realize is that lies travel a lot faster than truth. And so
Yeah.
that lie is out there. Once it gets lodged in someone's mind, you are now on defense, trying to dislodge that lie.
Yeah.
And so that's really what builds up, and I think what happens, that sort of thing happens in Missouri. Um, so you get these messages that say Democrats bad, Republicans good. But then when you remove all that messaging and you say, "Hey, do you want do you want abortion to be legal?" Or, "Hey, do you want to have weed legal in Missouri?" Or, "Hey, do you want to have a better minimum wage?" and so on. People say, "Oh yeah, I'll go for that," right?
Right. Right.
But they still go with
Yeah.
that conservative messaging. So it's
Yeah.
a
The
tough
economy
subject.
is one of the number one factors.
What's that?
Um, the economy
Oh
is
yeah,
one of the
sure.
top factors. But
Yeah.
I think along the same lines of what you're saying, like with Kamala and Trump, they were both asked what they would do about the economy, and just saying what I've seen or what I've caught from the sources that I have is Kamala's answer many times went into her talking about, well, I grew up as a latchkey kid and I had Nana was taking care of me. Used to come home from school, and it makes it sound like she doesn't have a plan because she doesn't get to it right away. And
Right.
then in another interview, probably was within a month of that, Trump is asked the same question, and his first response is, "I would bring down the cost of energy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I haven't seen him do that. I haven't seen any evidence of him doing that yet, but at least it's an answer which makes sense to me, just because of how the cost of gas affects everybody to
Right.
some degree with the shutting down of the Keystone pipeline. So there are truckers who, they spend 15, 16 hours a day on the road, and UPS and FedEx that, they have to deliver things. And so they made the cost of shipping go up. And then, of course, the food that has to get to
Sure.
the grocery store,
Well, yeah, it
you know what I
cascades
mean?
into
Making the
everything.
consumer make up the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those simple answers are what people hear, because the thing is, and this is something I'm trying, is I'm kind of an iconoclast in the Democratic Party here, because I push back on a lot of things. But one of the things that the Democrats don't realize is that the short answer wins the day. Trump said, I'm going to bring prices down on day one. I'm quite certain he didn't know exactly how he was going to do it. He just knew what people wanted to hear, and that's what he fed them. Because he knew that by the time day one comes around, there'd be so many things, so many other things going on that
Hmm.
he would be able to hide behind these other things. And if nothing else, he could always blame Biden for it. So that was his mode of operation from the very beginning. He said he would stop the Ukraine war. He'd get Zelensky and Putin on the phone, and
Yeah,
the war would be stopped within 24 hours. That's what
right.
people wanted to hear, right? So he gave it to them. They wanted.
Right.
Now, has he been able to do it? No. But a
Yeah. And
majority of these things he doesn't deliver on. A vast majority of these things he does not deliver
well,
on.
big things too, even if it was just a couple, something like I would stop the war in Ukraine in a day, or I'm going to make Mexico pay for the wall.
Yeah,
That makes me
all that.
wonder, really? How are you going to do that?
But the thing is, you're thinking about it. I mean, guys
Yeah,
like me, we critical thought, right? That's what we think. Like,
right.
okay, there is, I'm willing to listen to his plan. No, he doesn't have a plan. Okay, but if he had a plan, I'd be willing to listen to it. But he doesn't have a plan, so my BS detector goes off right away. So, okay, the guy's just basically lying to us. But guess what? That lie sticks with a lot of people. Not that they're not capable of critical thought. This is that
Mm,
people are so busy these days, and I got a whole spiel about why people are so busy these days, which goes back to the wealth gap. But they're extremely busy these days. They're trying to make a living, trying to put food on the table for their kids, etc. Things going on at school. They don't have the bandwidth to sit down and look at the economy for what it is. They can't listen to Jerome Powell or whoever's running the Fed chairman right now. Is it still Powell? I can't remember. But they don't have time to listen to him and all the nuances that he says about the economy. That's just
yeah,
that's just like it's like remember those old Charlie Brown cartoons where the adults are talking and it comes out whoa 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 whoa. That's what it means.
right.
So even me, I tune out after a while, right? I can't listen. It takes energy and it takes time,
Some
and
people
so people
legitimately
want that simple answer.
people
So
don't have the time.
they
They
don't,
don't.
and this
Yeah.
is another problem that we have in our society, a systemic problem we have in our society. Um, People are too darn busy. Now, I give you one view as to why that is. Um, I'm going to go back to 1980. I always like to go back to that year because that to me is like that's the beginning of sort of things starting to go off the rail. Back in
Hmm.
1980, you could buy a house for about 2.5 times your median salary. So in other words, I
Hmm.
took the average price of a home, divided by the median salary, and ended up with a ratio of 2.5. You go now to do that, it's almost 6 to 1. So
Hmm.
what that means is you got to earn more than twice the amount of money you earned before. Forget about cost of living increases. Well, we can even consider cost of living increases and so on because inflation is constantly going up. But things like housing are just skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And so now, when a husband and wife, a young couple starts out, my son is going through this right now. He's 30 years old. When a young couple starts out, um, they want to buy a house because that's the American dream, right? You buy a house, you
Yeah.
build equity in it, you raise your kids in it, and so on. And then when you're done, you downsize and you got a big pile of money in front of you. They can't do that, right? Because unless
Yeah.
both husband and wife are working, unless they're both pulling their
Absolutely.
salary, then they can afford the house. But then who's taking care of the kid? Right. So I wrote another article about that recently that said if you want to have more children, fix the economy. Yeah. And so that's why people are so busy. Husband and wife are busy. They come home, they got to take care of the kids, they got to do the housework, got to do the cooking, the cleaning, get the kids ready for school, pick up the kids from daycare, whatever. It's making us crazy busy out there, and it's all because of this wealth gap that is just doing crazy things. And one more thing I'll say is that the three big finance companies, BlackRock, who's that, Vanguard, and State Street, they are buying houses, sometimes sight unseen. They are buying houses and they are not selling them. What they're doing is renting them out. So a young couple now that goes out there to try to buy a house, they're being outbid by these big companies, big finance companies, many of whom have money from your 401ks. So they're using your 401k against you, but they're
Dan,
being outbid by these big companies, and so they're not able to afford their home.
Dan, let me have you stand by for 1 minute. I got that message again about it stopped recording,
Okay,
and it's saying to connect. I have plenty of power, but it's saying to connect a power source because laptop may be struggling. So
that's weird.
just give me
Okay,
1 minute. I'll be right back.
sure.
All right.
Was your power plug messed up or something?
All right. 1 moment. Let's see. I got to refresh it again. Okay.
Okay.
You there?
Yep. Can you see me?
Oh, okay. All right, great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if you could hear me yet. All right, it
Yeah, I
says
can hear you.
preview your takes. Okay. All right, so let's try to finish up to
Sure.
where you had finished what you were talking about already, and then um, well, I guess I don't. Well, yeah, I'll say that it's coming to a close, and then you could mention people want to follow you or find your articles and whatnot, where they can do that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we'll just go right in, and because it's going to be edited out later. So,
Sounds
yeah,
good.
you can go ahead and finish what you were saying. You don't have to even back up or miss a beat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was, so the conclusion of what I have to say here is that the young couples, young people these days have a really tough time getting started in this economy. And when they happen to compete against large finance corporations to purchase their home, that yes, people will say, well, that's capitalism in action, right? Was it capitalism in action when young couples are working so hard they can't have children, they can't pay attention to the politics that's going on around them? Recreation time is getting less and less. These are the things that happen, and as a state representative, if I make it to state representative level, I'm not sure what I could do about that specific issue uh, other than propose a higher level tax, or maybe not give the tax breaks to companies that go out and buy these homes and rent them out to people. I understand there's mom and pop operations that like to do that. So let's draw the line at say 50 homes or something like that. Um, this is the same idea that Sherrod Brown, the senator from Ohio, I don't believe he was reelected, but he had that same idea. He had a similar idea, I should say, and pushed that through the U.S. Tried to push it through the U.S. Congress, didn't make it. But we have to do something to protect the people. In other words, right now the people are just being preyed upon by some large corporations, and it's um, it's getting out of hand, especially for young people these days.
Can I ask you a question about the the financing that people have to pay on their houses? Because I may be a little ignorant of that, but the the mortgage companies who have the loans, or I don't know if they just determine their own interest rate for what it would be. But is that mostly done where the finance companies or the mortgage companies, they basically just look around at each other, the other ones that are in that market, kind of like four gas stations on four corners, and say, okay, he's 395, he's 398. I'll come 3 cents below the lowest guy, regardless of that may still be expensive,
Right.
but to try to make as much as I just make as much money as I can while still being competitive. Or
Right.
is it the cost of uh doing something? I mean, the house is already built, and everything that goes into a house seems to come from six or seven different sources, but
Right.
you got finance companies, which that's basically all they deal with. They finance, meaning give loans in exchange for making a profit on the interest.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with that. I think that what you're describing there is capitalism as it should work. You got
Hmm.
four gas stations competing for the lowest price. Yeah, these guys play those games as long as they're not collaborating in any way, uh, which is like a violating antitrust laws. Um, and same thing with houses. What I'm talking about now is the housing prices themselves.
Yeah.
If you're making $50,000 a year, which is kind of the median salary in the eighth district of Missouri where I live, that's U.S. congressional eighth district. Um, 50 to 55,000 is the median salary, but you're paying 300,000 plus for a home. Some
Oh
of these homes
yeah.
out there, yeah, you can get away with less than that. You can go out and buy a trailer home and do things much less
Yeah.
than that. But the home where I am right now, that's about yeah, it's well over 300,000 at this point. So the this is what young couples have to deal with, making those mortgage payments, which means that they're just going to have both mother and father are going to have to work. Now, if you go back to
Yeah.
1980, I don't know if you remember like that old show called All in the Family. It's actually
Oh
from the
yeah.
1970s, Archie
Hmm.
Bunker and so on. I pick on that because that was sort of a snapshot of where America was at that point. You had one man who was working, I don't know if he's a cab driver or a
Cab
longshoreman,
driver.
a cab
Yeah.
driver, yeah. So he was
And
making,
Edith didn't work.
yeah,
She, she didn't. She
yeah,
didn't have a
yeah,
job or
Edith
bring a
didn't work.
paycheck.
Well, it was a classic family, right? The
Yeah.
man goes out, makes the money, the woman stays home, takes care of it, and he's able to afford the home, afford his car, afford to send his daughter to college, that sort of thing. That was the American dream, and some people say, well, let's make America great again. I'm all in on that one, okay? But what built out the American middle class? What was the one entity that built out the American middle class? It was the unions. They came up with the
Mm.
5-day work week. They negotiated better wages for their workers. You just go right down the line. The unions were responsible for a lot of the middle class and a lot of the privileges that we have. Well, what happened to unions? First thing that happened after Reagan was voted in 1980, when he took office in 81, he fired the air traffic controllers because they dared to go on strike.
Yeah.
And this set up a cascading series of motions that ground the unions, just ground them into the dirt. Right now, he just went out and fired a whole bunch of federal workers that were protected under union contract. He tore up these contracts and fired federal workers. This is what's happening to the American worker. They're getting less and less of the piece of that pie, and the days of Archie Bunker
Hmm.
are gone. I mean, unless the husband is like some high end lawyer or a doctor or something
Yeah.
like that, those days
Right.
are gone. And the typical family now is husband and wife. They have to work. It's not just wanting to work; they have to work, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
still run into exceptions: stay home mom and stay home dads, but for the most part, the average American family, both mother and father have to work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is what's wrong with
Yeah.
America. You want to make America great again? Fine. Bring the unions back. Okay. Bring public schools back. Public schools are also under attack, particularly in Missouri here. They've been under attack, and these attacks have been fairly successful in grounding down all the public schools here. 30% of the schools in Missouri are now down to 4-day weeks. Why? Because
Hmm.
that's the only way they could attract teachers. Teachers can work 4 days a week and then have the other 3 days a week to make more money because they have to. They're not being paid enough. So,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. With unions, what I would like to see is the terms of the union and what they want for their employees, and that the company that it's inside of, or I mean, there are some that are part of an industry that people can work at several companies and be a part of that. The United Auto Workers, not
sure,
just one plant.
right,
But I would like to see good people come to the table and negotiate it, because it's kind of this thing about something was birthed out of a strong need for it, and then it can get extreme to the other side, or there could be an overcorrection, and then things are never dialed back. One example, I'm a fan of classic movies,
mhm,
and I was just reading this little piece on James Cagney. When he started the first couple of years, the studios were having people work like 17, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so he got with some other people and fought for there to be stipulations, and we
right,
we can't work more than this number, because it was killing them and
yeah,
just draining their energy. And they, a lot of people have families, and so that's extreme.
yeah,
And then you don't want, on the other hand, I've seen some teachers unions where it's like, in a clause or whatever, that they can't get fired,
right,
that they don't even have to really teach. All they have to do is show up. And then a lot of these teachers, they would be read a newspaper with their feet kicked up on the desk, and kind of letting kids go about what they wanted to do. So
right. Well,
every
you've
every
got
community just needs to, just needs to stay on top of that, make sure things don't go off to one side, you
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah, unions, I mean, yeah, there's corruption in unions as well. So
Yeah.
you've got these things on both ends. The thing is, in America, that's how we roll, though, right? We fix things where we find them, but we
Mhm.
keep when we have a good idea, we move forward. Um, I'll give you another example right now. Very much fighting unions is Amazon and to some degree Walmart. But did you realize that we're subsidizing a lot of their labor with our tax dollars? Because they are not paying their people enough to make a living. So a lot of the people that work for these companies,
Yeah.
Walmart and Amazon being two of them, there's more out there. They have to draw upon public services in order to make ends meet. So our tax dollars are going into helping people that are working full time already, or close to full time.
I was only
Um,
aware of the retired people who they come in and work for them, um, or there's something going on. I know they get a tax break, but I didn't know, somebody's Walmart or Amazon 30, 35 years old, that tax dollars are going toward their salary in some way.
well, not toward their salary, but we are subsidizing them with Medicaid,
Yeah, okay.
SNAP benefits, because they're not making enough. And what companies are trying to do now, and I've seen this firsthand working for companies, they make you sign an agreement that you cannot work for their competitor, right? So they can let
Yeah.
you go and then say, for at least a year, you cannot work for one of our competitors. Well,
Yeah.
where
That
is,
happened to me. Yeah.
yeah. And so, where are our lawmakers at that point? What
Yeah.
companies are afraid of is that you're going to give away their secrets. I get that, and I've firsthand seen someone give away
Hmm.
company secrets, and I got drawn into a giving a testimony about it myself.
Oh,
I understand companies want to protect themselves, but you can go work for your competitor and not give away secrets from your previous company. But
right.
even so, I mean, you quit Walmart and you go to work for Best Buy or something like that. I mean, come on, you can't tell someone not to work for a particular company or something. So, yeah,
And I think people, many times they want to use the skills that they have learned. It's a
absolutely,
skill that
yeah,
they picked up. You don't get all your skills in trade school or college, but sometimes it's with work experience. And so that's really why it's valuable to list it on a resume, is
yeah,
because it's showing, if I've done this, that means that I know how to do it and I can do it for you,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. I mean, I don't see the problem with that, honestly. I see a problem with giving away company secrets, but that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah,
What happens is you get your skill where you work, and you
right.
take that skill to your next job. It's just as simple as that. Um,
Right.
yeah, there are also, along those same lines, there are these clauses when you sign your credit card contract or something. If you read the fine print, which very few people do, we don't have time, right? I have to
Yeah,
admit, I don't read them all the time.
pages of stuff.
Pages, but buried in those pages is an arbitration clause that says, okay, if you have a problem with this company, it could be credit card company, it could be your phone company for your cell phone or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an arbitration clause that says, no, you can't sue them directly if they've done something wrong to you. You got to go to an arbiter into arbitration. And a lot of times they pick
Hmm.
the arbiters themselves. So it's like, this is type of things. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau tries to stop all this stuff. Well, guess what just happened? The CFPB, or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, yeah, is being defunded at this point. So we're being thrown to the wolves in a sense. We're not getting into this protection. So when people say, well, don't sign the contract. Well, fine. Well, we're going to get a cell phone if you don't sign one of those contracts. Who's going to sell
Mhm.
you a cell phone that doesn't have an arbitration clause attached to it?
Yeah.
So, we don't have a choice, and this is where our lawmakers are falling short. They're not looking at these details and saying, you can't do this to our people. You can't force somebody into arbitration when through your negligence you've done some harm to somebody. So,
I think that could be a good thing for almost an entire platform, is to
yeah,
have a list of things at different companies that should be changed, that any employees would agree, and most reasonable people that are on the outside of the company what Greece should change for working conditions, and you get 8 or 10 things that you say that you're gonna fight for to make that change happen. That could get a lot of support at the voting booth.
It can generate a lot of support, but what you're up against, and this is the conundrum that I think every politician faces, is you start talking about stuff like that, big business starts to notice, the lobbyists start to take
Hmm.
notice, and next thing you know, they're funding your opposition.
Oh
Uh,
boy,
as a politician, you don't want to take money from big companies, but a lot of them do,
right?
and the ones
Yeah,
that don't necessarily win because they don't have enough money to put the big billboards up there or run the ads on TV or whatever. So they don't win. But the ones that are willing to take the money, they're the ones that win. So
I heard this thing about many people that are in politics, in Congress and in D.C. and governors and people that are elected officials. Many of them get offered bribes or yeah. I guess a
yeah,
bribe, just an incentive and agreement, saying we'll give you this amount of money, give you these gifts if you do this,
oh
and
yeah,
with it being unethical, but that they can be offered that 10 times a month. And in most of it, they say no to, even the corrupt ones.
hmm
But then there's one or once in a while that slips through the crack that they think that they can do and get away with. But it's just like being in an industry where the temptation is
it's
is
always
so
in front of you.
great.
Yeah,
Like you heard about the basketball players who have these groupies that follow them around with a mission to try to find them. And so there's a dozen women that try to find out where this guy's hotel room is. And so there's a filter. Most of them get stopped, but a couple get through. And then he's face to face with the temptation and has to tell them himself because they got past security or whatever. And it can be a lot. It can be a lot.
yeah, yeah.
It,
Well, it's not only the bribery. I don't think bribery is a huge thing, outright bribery, because people tend to get caught at that stuff. Um,
mhm,
but what does happen with many of these, I'd say majority, and Democrats and Republicans alike, they go off-site and they do what's called
oh
dialing
yeah.
for dollars. They go to call centers. It has to be off government property, and they will
Mhm,
spend up to 50% of their time dialing for dollars. That means calling all of your donors. So first thing
mm,
that happens when you get elected is you start working on your next election. So
yeah.
that means making those calls, promising people things, and that's how the campaign funds come in. Now
Mhm,
that's just for campaign funds, which don't go directly to you, but it's
yeah.
kind of a bribe in a sense that it goes to your campaign.
Sure.
It also can go to these PACs and the super PACs, and the super PACs can be completely um, uh, how to say it, completely opaque about where their money goes. And yeah, they're going to throw their support behind someone who's going to be nice to them. And so that's,
Right.
as they say, America is the best democracy you can buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big
Um.
issue. Big issue.
Still a great country, and you can't completely get rid of corruption. And I would say, uh, 95% of the world is more corrupt than we are, with Ukraine being one of them. Is just not
Yeah,
there are not things in place that can monitor and regulate like we have here. Where
I,
where,
I,
where they
I would
where they're
beg to
working
differ.
for the people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would beg to differ. I think that I've spent time in other countries as well. My wife is from the Netherlands, and so I get back there quite often. Um,
Hmm.
but just you try to get away with that corruption in any of these European nations out there. I don't think that would work. I think they have their checks and balances in place. What's happening now is we have corruption on a mass scale. We have this flying palace that the country of Qatar wanted to give, still wants to give to Trump, Qatar is a proxy for a lot of terrorist organizations out there.
Yeah.
So we're basically, I think it was who was it, Laura Loomer said that we're basically taking a plane from jihadists in suits. And I,
Mm.
as much as I really don't like Laura Loomer, she really hit the nail on the head with that one. Uh, that's happening. We've got Trump giving out his the Trump card. I just read about that this morning. Anyone with
Hmm.
$5 million can buy themselves a green card. Um, there's Trump, the Trump coin.
Huh. Never heard of that.
Donald Trump and
Yeah.
Melania have that. Their
Yeah.
family is reaping in a lot. Abu Dhabi right now is in, well, this is actually as of about a month ago, in the process of putting up to $2 billion into Trump coin. So who's getting that money? Donald J. Trump, and that's
Yeah. I was
going right
some.
through his pocket. So no, the corruption is out in the open. The only difference now is that we're seeing it. We're seeing it in real time,
Yeah.
and still people are still kind of in shock over this, and they'll say the same things you are, like, oh, the corruption isn't that bad in this country. No, it's pretty bad, and that's one thing that brings countries down is corruption. And I understand there's always going to be some level of corruption,
Yes.
but it's a matter of degrees, and right now it
Yes.
is absolutely out of control, in my opinion. Absolutely out of control.
It definitely exists here in the U.S. I was thinking about is Mexico and uh, I guess some of the European countries, but just where I mean, even Haiti when they had the earthquake and the relief
Mhm.
effort was sent down there, and it was like I don't know, some millions of dollars that was sent, and it didn't get through, or didn't get through to the right people
Right.
because this militia, these people that they don't technically work for the government, but they're driving jeeps and wearing battle fatigues and just intercepting. But that it just didn't. You need an army almost to escort the money and food and other supplies to get to the places that they need to,
Yeah,
because it's so.
that is a really difficult situation that happened. That 2010, when that, I think, when that earthquake happened.
Mhm.
Even now, it's just they're still suffering. Um, I don't know what you do in a situation like that. I mean, you could send your own army down there, but then you're basically invading a sovereign territory. So
Yeah.
how does that work? I think the next best solution was to get some people out of Haiti and bring them to the States, which is what a lot of them did. They're now being forced to go back,
Mhm.
um, which I think is unfair. I mean, we have a concern about our population in the state, in the United States, population dropping, but yet we're kicking people out that are progressive, productive, not progressive, but productive people.
Here's
So
an idea. Didn't plan this in advance, but kind of just from what we were talking about, and just ask you what you think of this, if this is possible. What if there's a nation where there aren't term limits on the president or the government, and elections are fixed. The guy wins every time, 100%,
right.
or 98%. Is there a way to ask the citizens if they want to have them removed? Some way to get the majority of the consensus from them, and then it becomes something that they want, and we're helping them, as opposed to us just invading a sovereign nation.
I think that's a powder keg. It's a very dangerous powder keg because there will always be questions about whether the people were polled correctly, where did they
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
coerced to say this. I just think
the details.
it's a difficult situation. I think
Oh,
Haiti is one of those things where damned if you do and damned if you don't.
hmm.
And I'd be somewhat speechless. What I'd have to do. I'm not always the smartest guy in the room. Right now, I'm the smartest guy in the room because I'm the only guy around here.
Yeah,
But
that's
but
all right. You
that
just want there to be in a crowd full of you
I
know,
want to
in a
be
crowd
surrounded by
filled.
smart people that
Right,
come
right.
up with good
I was
ideas.
going to say something else, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, but because I even in engineering, I mean, I just constantly being humbled by I think I'm pretty smart, and then some other guy comes along like, oh crap, why didn't I think of that? But no, I'm not the smartest person in the room normally, and so but what I would want to do is surround myself with smart people and try to figure out,
Yes.
what do you do about things like Haiti? Another one's going on in Missouri right now. Our hospitals, our rural hospitals and health clinics are closing. They're going offline, and there's counties out here that have no medical services whatsoever, fairly rural counties. But if you ever, in rural counties, it just means a lot of farmers out there, and farming is like one of the most dangerous professions out there. You're
Yeah.
working with big machines, and you're all alone, right? So,
Right.
um, so one of the ideas that I thought of, I got to get a lot of smart people to surround me on this is, sure, we can start rebuilding hospitals. I'm not sure how to do that, but how about having a medevac system that doesn't charge an arm and a leg, literally, to get you to the big cities. So if something happens, you get medevaced out right away.
Yeah.
And on the medevac, you have qualified people that can do more than just stabilize your symptoms, but actually do more invasive things.
Yeah.
That would cost a lot less, I think, than trying to build a rural hospital. But it's
That's
just one
a
of those things where I got to get myself surrounded by some smart people, and let's try to work through the finances and everything else on that.
well, that's a good thing, and that's a feasible thing in certain communities because long time ago, a little over 15 years, my brother had a stroke. He lived in Bisbee, Arizona, which is
Mhm.
very close to the border, and he didn't have health insurance, and he was airlifted to Phoenix
Mhm.
and put in the ICU there. So somebody made the decision or had the resources. I'm just thinking that that's not cheap to use a helicopter and the fuel
Right.
and everything that comes along with it, and the pilot has to get paid.
Right.
So they looked at someone that wasn't part of the system and said that he needed help. This is important. Minutes are critical, so I need to get him there,
Mhm.
and was transported to a city that was not nearby.
Right.
So that obviously is already a blueprint in place for that to happen,
Sure.
and so yeah, I think different communities or different states can do that because you make a good point. When you first start talking about farmers, I was like, yeah, it's their number one source of income and their livelihood, and it can be lucrative for them if they pull it off. But if somebody slips under the tractor and the hospital is not within 10 miles,
Yeah.
you gotta have something have something in place
Yeah.
to get them where they need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they get a heart attack or something like that. I mean, every minute counts.
Yeah.
So you've got to get some sort of air ambulance system out there. Um, that to me is like the immediate solution. I don't think there's necessarily a long term solution,
Yeah.
but at least that solves some of these counties out there that don't have these types of services. So, um, and I would like to see it so that it's not charging people any money, because
Yeah.
these helicopter rides are like thousands and thousands of dollars, and if you're
Right.
uninsured, you're gonna have another heart attack when you see the bill. So,
Right. Right. A bill that would take maybe years,
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
not going to be your only bill.
yeah,
It's one more than all the other ones you already got.
yeah, exactly.
You can't call up the electric company and say, "Hey, I was hauled in an ambulance, and they charged me $5,000 for that, and I got to pay them." They're going to say, "We don't want to hear that. Do
Yeah,
you want lights or don't you?" You know.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Well, Dan, we're gonna wrap up now. Is there anything you can say about what people can follow you or
sure.
see you read your articles or whatnot?
Yeah, the main page for me is just danformo.com. DAN, the number four, MO for Missouri. Have no idea
Hmm.
what they get MO out of Missouri, but danformo.com. Um,
Yeah.
and then
What
from
what's
there,
Montana? What's the abbreviation for that?
I think it's MT. There's like 8 states that begin with M's: Mississippi, Maine, Missouri, Montana, Minnesota, Michigan. I don't know. So they have to kind of
Yeah.
figure out what to do. So Missouri, they decided for some reason, oh, let's just grab the letter O and stick it in there. So it's danformo.com. And
That's easy to remember.
yeah, it's pretty easy. It's pretty short. And then from there, I have at the bottom of the page, you can see all the links going off to like this place called the Frontline Progressive, where I publish all my articles. Facebook, I think there's a link up there for Reddit and so on. So it's kind of the jump off point for everything else. I put a lot up there, and I'm doing something different than most politicians. Most politicians will put like a one page there and say, "Here's who I am, and here's all the check boxes." And that's it, right? Right. Yeah. Well, you can click here to donate, right? I put
Yeah.
lots of pages up there. I want people to see exactly who I am, what I'm doing. I want them to go to
Yeah.
all these links if they have time. Read some of these stories and read some of the articles I've written and get an idea who I am. Try to be transparent in that way.
Right, right. And people are three-dimensional and have many facets to them. And someone really needs to have that to explain and try to get someone to know who they are that doesn't have the luxury of having a one-on-one conversation or isn't going to meet you in person.
Right.
So that's good. It's showing them you from 360 because it's many different issues, and so there's many different beliefs about these different things.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
All
Good.
right, hey,
Well, I
thanks.
enjoyed my time here. We had a good discussion.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. I enjoyed it. So everybody, subscribe and keep coming back and put your comments on if you have any. You can also email myself, and you can give your email address too if you like, but I am brutehonest@gmail.com. Is there an email you like to leave?
Well, just me. If people want to email me directly, it's dan@danformo.com. The same
Oh.
danformo.com is dan@danformo.com.
Yeah,
Pretty
that's good. Keeping consistent and less to remember.
Yeah. And I just about donations, I can't take any right now because I'm officially not, as far as the state of Missouri is concerned, I haven't signed up with the Missouri Ethics Commission yet and filled out all the paperwork yet. I will do that, but until that point comes, you can click on the donation button, but it will just tell you, please come back later. So
Yeah.
so no donations at this point.
Understandable. Right. But when is this next election that you will be running in? Just
Well, there'll be
make sure
2026.
people.
So
Okay.
technically, I have to sign up by, I think, the beginning of March next year. I'll probably sign up before that. I'm holding back a little bit because I'm working with some of the local Democratic people here because there's also an open state Senate seat. They have nobody ready to run on that one, and that's a much bigger hill for me to climb. So I'm a little bit hesitant, but I told them that, hey, if you don't find somebody soon, I'm willing to do it. But I'm going to need a lot more support, but I'm willing to do it. So I'm kind of holding back on that, seeing which direction that goes.
Good deal, Dan.
Yeah. So that's
All right.
my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
I give the impression, anyways, don't I?
Well, people have to be a person of principle and a person of conviction, and stick with what you believe.
Yeah.
And so you know what you believe, and so you can go hard in any direction.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks,
Hey,
Elmo.
take care.
Appreciate it.
All right. And I'll be in touch with you, let you know like when the full episode's available, and also I release several shorts before then leading up to it. But
okay.
yeah, you can go to the channel and subscribe, and then everything that comes to you that way. But
Okay.
I'll put the link in Podmatch as well.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Elmo.
All right, you're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.